Okay. So hello everybody. Thanks for coming, especially for having wake up so early this morning. Hope it was more easy for you than for me. And this talk will basically deal with cybercrime in nowadays businesses. So just a few words about me. I'm a guy who works for iTechBridge, an ethical hacking company based in Geneva, where I manage the ethical hacking department. This conference basically will deal with nowadays cybercrimes. Oh, just put some time. Which have become more sophisticated, which usually now often targeted businesses which may be ordered by unfair competitors. So rules have changed, and this talk is all about this matter. So it's a real post-investigation study which occurred last year in Geneva. And the client will be named here Fedor Trading to hide his identity. The talk will only last one round of 50 minutes. So it's quite short to see a whole investigation. So I will try to save the most time that I can so that we can cover everything. So please keep your question for the end, because they may have been answered automatically until the last slide. And don't worry if we go quickly over some slides. Everything will be made public, the video also, so you can basically go everything without writing anything. The project context, basically, just in few words. Last year, the CTO of a well-known financial institution contacted us, and basically they were thinking about a potential attack against their system, but they were thinking about just a kind of phishing attempt, and basically the CTO didn't want to contact us. He was obliged to do this for political reasons, and he only wanted us at the beginning to go with a quick investigation, and the aim was clearly to help him reassuring its CEO that everything was under control and that nothing really serious occurred. Unfortunately, he was wrong, as you will see yourself in the next slide. So we began with only one thing that we could have begun with, which are the emails that some employees in their companies have received. So those mails basically contains a text which is quite good and quite technical. At a very first glance, we were not thinking that it was a phishing attempt, because first, you don't have several grammatical faults per line, such as all kind of phishing attempts which come from China, Russia, and so on. The text was sophisticated, and it dealt with a real matter of forex trading at this time. So I'm not a guru in forex. I don't know pretty much nothing in forex, but everything was very convincing to me. So since the beginning, we were disagree, and we were thinking that it was most, unfortunately, a targeted attack, that just a simple poor phishing. So SMTP headers clearly reveal an IP address. Other headers are just not really interesting and may have been easily crafted, so don't focus on them. We had an IP address which was hosted in United States with a domain which existed since 2 years, nothing quite unusual, which was Neo Interactive. And if we look at this the website, basically, without going into too technical details, we just noticed quite quickly that it was not a secure web server. It has a lot of mistake configuration and old components. Basically, it was quite possible for someone who has a few skills to compromise it quite quickly. Moreover, if you do just a simple DNS reverse lookup, we noticed that there were more than 80 domains which were hosted on the same server, and most websites were did also contain some web application code problem in the own code, in fact. So a lot of factors which altogether combined give us a strong likelihood that something wrong occurred and that the web server may have been compromised most probably just to send some crafted mails which could permit hackers to remain anonymous. Another bad point for Fedor trading is that this domain did have an MX record. So basically, all people who received the mail most probably received it in their inbox. If they did not carry out more deeper investigation, there is no reason for those mails to have reached the junk folder. So once again, it was just a feeling at this point, no technical skills, no real investigation, but we were thinking that the web server was compromised to carry out a specific targeted attack against this trading institution. So mails were not exploitable anymore. We did ask more information, and we wanted our client to give us some FTP credentials to get more information in web server logs. So this leads us to the very first beginning of the real analysis. The client side, the client website analysis. So basically, his website was hosted externally at Infomaniac, and since the very beginning, we could notice that there is some mistakes in the development of the website. For example, the robot.txt crawling file was a little bit talkative. It's not so amazing, it's not so dangerous, but in only 1 second, we could easily identify some potential sensitive resources which may help someone to do nasty things. You can see the development interface, which usually are far less secure than the production one. We can see the administration resources. So first thing was just to have a look, maybe because we were thinking that something wrong happened and basically that their own website was compromised. But the client didn't agree. He was thinking everything was fine. And his own word was, if we were compromised, I don't think so, but if it was the case, it was maybe just for a potential publicly available web interface. Everything is removed, secured, and basically don't waste your time. But we really insisted to carry out this kind of pre-investigation. The existing account didn't reveal anything really suspect. We just had a look if maybe there was a compromise, maybe some people may have forgotten to delete an account, something like that. But everything was fine. Only some old accounts which were not used anymore, and also bad practice, but nothing really serious. So we downloaded a huge amount of logs to carry out further investigation locally. It was the only point we had at this time. And everywhere in logs, you could have noticed that they were under attacks quite frequently. Well, it's not so abnormal because first, it was a web server, so it is publicly available, and therefore nearly every time attacked by scripts and so on. But second reason is that it's a trading system, so they may have more enemies than you and me, so it's quite okay. In those logs, we can see, for example, some directory transversal attempts, some null byte injection, which are really a lot of queries in a few times. It was automated tools. Nothing really serious, but just to prove that, yes, they had enemies. So we had a hard duty, which was to investigate a lot of logs because we didn't have any time frame. We were thinking that they have been compromised, but it was just a theory. We don't have any proof for that at this time. And if it was the case, we even don't know when. Maybe it was 2 years before because the client just did not know what happened. So we had a lot of logs, and it was not so easy to find something. So we ran some queries to detect some patterns. We quickly identified some problem, and as this was slow queries because a lot of logs, we just try to manage our time better, and therefore we just have a look manually on the security level of their own website. And we identified a few problems. One of them catched our attention. It was a potential SQL injection. But fortunately for them, their WAF was doing quite a good job, and it was not possible to exploit it really, only to have some error message or no web page. But another proof that they may have more problems than they were thinking about. So we passed for usual SQL injection because it was clearly the ID now, and we identified a lot of such attacks in logs. Most of them were only automated exploitation tools, so not something really convincing. But we could have noticed that most injections were quite tricky. We are really far from just the one or one is equal to one. Oh, I was thinking it was my breakfast. No? So yeah, quite tricky SQL injection, but nothing was proven in the logs that they were successfully exploited. But if you go deeper into details, we could recognize some constants in hexadecimal, and in other parts on the logs, we could have noticed some banners, but those constants are really used in one tool which is called Hafiz, which is used in Arabic countries. But Hafiz was clearly used in lots of SQL automated injection in this case. So what's happened at this time? The good point for us was to try to know what kind of information those hackers may have been accessed with this tool. So we downloaded the current version of Hafiz, which was the 1.2 version. It is a newer version now, quite more powerful, but at this time it was a 1.2. And we have run it against the client infrastructure. So fortunately for them, it didn't manage to do anything, but it was still able to dump the database name. So for us, it was a kind of small bingo because we could say, okay, you have a real problem. We can have the name of your database. So even if Hafiz didn't manage to recognize how many columns were in queries, and even if he gave up after the 32 attempts, we definitely had a poke of SQL injection vector. So with all this information, we told the client, okay, for us, there is something more. We really need to investigate more things. So you don't have much time. We need more access on your website because we need to know the table names to craft some very fine-tuned queries to identify where the attack may have occurred. The client was okay, give us everything we wanted, and we accessed the Infomaniac web administration pages. So now we knew the table names, the database names, the sensitive fields, and we could manage to have more fine-tuned queries. And it was more fast, much faster. In a few seconds, we quickly identified new attacks, which this time, unfortunately for the client, was real attacks, malicious attacks and successful attacks. So we could have seen some anonymous line which clearly showed that the clients have been hacked. And in fact, most tables were remotely dumped. It was possible to collect all customer email addresses and dump hash password and so on. So the IP we initiated this attack was in Iran. It didn't offer any publicly available services. It was most probably just a simple bot to hide the hacker anonymity. So what's next? So the problem maybe was that the client, okay, he has most of the parts use his own self-made code, but he also relied on Joomla, which is not maybe the first choice to host some sensitive data for a forex trading company. But the problem was not in Joomla because for this time, Joomla was pretty well secured. It was patched for everything, and there is no problem in Joomla. The problem was in one of the commercial plugins. So unfortunately, the client paid to have something which was professional, and he installed a module. I even don't know how to read it. ESH404CIF. Not know how that can be read, but this module is quite famous in the security modules for Joomla. Basically, it's just SEO optimization analytics and URL rewriting, which permits to basically prevent a lot of web attacks such as flooding and XSS and this kind of nasty things. But unfortunately, it was this module which permitted someone to inject their own SQL code. So in that particular case, the security module brought insecurity to the client. So let's go deeper. So the SQL injection was indeed a little bit tricky to exploit. And the point is that there were no possibility to exploit it automatically. That means that we have lots, all the automated tools you can know about SQL injection and web exploitation, and none of them was able to even detect anything wrong. That means that it was not just a script kiddie attack. We didn't know what to do the night and run some things and get a shell and do some things. No, it was really most probably just a targeted attack made by someone who, one, had time to do this, and two, really had some financial way to proceed. So as a proof of concept, we have digged with the aforementioned vulnerability, and we crafted ourselves 12 URL, which as a POC demonstrated to the client that we can basically take control of the whole backend database. Those are the 12 database HTTP queries, and we will go into detail with each of them just to make a short reminder on SQL injection. So what is nice from a technical point of view in this SQL injection is that all information leakage in this case occurred in the title bar of the internet browser. It's not so usual. The first queries, nothing really serious, it's just to identify the PHP engine, which permit to think about more specialized payload for typical version of PHP. Next request just permits to retrieve username and database name. It's quite the beginning of such an attack. The 3 following requests permit to list databases. We add 3 databases. The first one is the information schema. It means that we only have 2 real databases on this production server, because the next query didn't have any results. You can see that it's a standard Mozilla Firefox title. That means that there were only 3 databases on the database management system. So 2 next requests permitted to dump the schema and to attack tables. And as soon as we had tables, it was possible to enumerate tables. And basically, in the 11th request, we enumerate all the columns from a specific tables which was interesting because we identified these tables previously. And the last one was the real payload. We can dump record per record all sensitive data regarding trader user, Forex trading system. So we could collect names, emails, hash password, and so on. So right after we automated this kind of payloads ourselves, and we showed that it was quickly possible to dump all personal data for the customers of our client. So the good things, if there is some good thing at this time for him, is that since version 1.5 something of Joomla, password hash are salted. That means that you cannot easily get the password when you compromise the system and only have the hash. The bad thing is that only one account in all accounts that we could have dumped didn't have any salt. Most probably because it was an old account which was used by a consultant. That's a story revealed after that. And it was created with an old version of Joomla before migrations, and the account was never updated with password change and so on. So that means that, unfortunately for them, there was one account, an administrative account, which have no salted password and which could be break in a few seconds. And it's still funny to notice that we have still a lot of users who at this time who are still using the name of the wife, of the daughter, of the pets in password. So it's a financial trading institution. There are external consultants, and you can see that the password was Julia. So the client himself didn't have any problem with his employees. All passwords were quite strong, and we didn't manage to break them with dictionary attacks, for example. So the only one good point for him is that this was not made publicly available because the hackers did not use this account to break anything. So maybe they did not notice or did not want it to attack this account. But maybe also it was just because even if they saw it, maybe they just didn't want to break anything because it would have been counterproductive, as you will understand when all the puzzle will be clear with this whole attack concept. So here are just a poke that other passwords were more protected. And that's it for the client mail analysis. So now we have the biggest part, which is the malware analysis. The only remaining part we could have was to focus on the PDF file which was embedded into the fake mails that everybody could have received. So there were several emails which were sent with different scenario attacks, different social engineering modules, in fact, but all PDF was the same version PDF. Why PDF? Because it's still today the most prevalent method for remote exploitation. Everybody uses PDF in all companies. All perimeter firewalls clearly authorize PDF to traverse. And it's widely used for drive-by download or drive-by exploitation on website. You could easily send some social engineering email with such attachment. So basically, yeah, you must fear PDF today and probably tomorrow. And last point is that it's really hard for antiviruses to investigate into PDF. PDF are really different from predictable binary file. And so that's a challenge for antiviruses for the next years. For example, last year, the 9th October, there was only 4 antiviruses on 43 that detected a potential threat in this PDF. That means a really low detection rate of about 9%. And the 3rd October this year, so much time later, we still have a detection rate of about 37%, despite the time that antivirus vendors did have to update signatures and do things. So basically, really dangerous. Why? First, because PDF do support a lot of compression formats, which mean different way to store data, which mean different way to obfuscate code. It also supports encryption natively, different encryption, strong encryption. They support hexadecimal form, Unicode, from shardcode, other things which may help someone to hide something. They have some logical streams which may be quite tricky to understand and may permit to store other objects. Each of them can also store some other kind of components, such as action scripts through Flash component, for example. So basically, you can hide a lot of things and do a lot of things with PDF. In this case, this PDF was a zero-day attack. It relied on a specific vulnerability that we will uncover now, which basically permitted to inject code in all versions of Adobe programs until version 9.4, which only was made publicly available the 5th of October. That means that everybody who have received the mails most probably have executed code without even noticing anything. So the beginning in this kind of forensics is to just have a quick analysis of what's happened in the PDF. So with a PFID, for example, you can search for risky keywords. Here, we can see several interesting things. You can see that there is some embedded JavaScript with automated actions performed at the beginning by the PDF rendering application. You can see that there is some encrypted part and something quite unusual. The document seems to have contained several pages, which is not so usual in a malicious PDF crafted file, but it was a false positive. The file was so damaged that in fact you were thinking a lot of things which were not true. And an acroform, which can also be used as a trigger to execute something. So if you look, next step is to look at the entropy. So entropy, basically, you can notice that the total entropy is the entropy inside stream really near from the max of 8, which would have suggested a quite normal PDF. But if you look also the entropy outside stream and the quantity of bytes which are after the last end of file tag, which is not so normal for such a tag, then you would have lead to another conclusion, is that they may lead us to think that it's a malformed PDF, and data was most probably added out without stream objects outside. So basically that's all. And it was true. In fact, the file was so damaged that if you wanted to analyze it deeper with, for example, a Walker, which is a GUI of origami, a nice French tool, basically it cannot do anything. It just led me into error. The client-side command was the same problem. It could have confirmed some things, but basically not usable. In fact, even if you use it with some version of Adobe Reader, the Adobe Reader program itself was rebuilding the file because it was thinking it was damaged. Unfortunately, it was damaged in a specific way that only him was able to reconstruct everything and could be porn, in fact. So, from a pure technical view, again, everything is really, really, really nice. The logical flow could be easily identified without any problem, but despite we were still not able to extract JavaScript. For sure, we tried to do it manually. We search for specific keywords. We identify several objects, the 3 and the 7 and the 30, which do remain the triggers of the JavaScript code. But all of them was quite obfuscated. We don't manage to understand what was it. Some was on 2 bytes, on 3 bytes, on 1 byte. Because what you must know is in usual PDF attacks today, hackers generally obfuscate things, that's clear. But they do it in quite predictable way. In fact, they often use a simple XOR algorithm with only 1 byte length to hide something. And they may also proceed with some rotation on left, rotation on right, double rotation, triple rotation. But it's basically, it may be complex to analyze, but basically it's only right on those 2 operations. So in most cases, you can just do an XOR search from DD Stevens, and you can just search for specific keywords, such as HTTP, which most often are used in exploit to connect to a website and download some things. But here, nothing happened. The only one solution at this time was to reverse engineer everything. So let's do that. We have no choice. So we could have seen that it was easily, but this screen capture was taken after several hours of investigation because we do not know everything where we were in this encrypted file. But after letting decrypting some things, we clearly see a really nice, really interesting assembly code. We have left some comments on the right to help you understand what basically was. But you can notice an XOR key on 4 bytes. No public tools use decryption on 4 bytes XOR key. So as soon as we had these keys, it was a kind of small victory because no, we could have done some research more seriously. For example, we were able to extract ourselves some payload which was embedded into the PDF file, which was not possible before. It was the MIA DLL file which was embedded to this exploit. This file, fortunately for us, was not encrypted, and we could have get more information without taking 2 days to go into encryption low-level skills. It was not encrypted, and we could have dumped some strings, but we will see later because they will be used later. The attack is quite complex and has more chain. So what happened exactly for the trigger? Basically, it was a cool type DLL which was abused by in Adobe Reader, and which has done a string cut on a unique name failed from the sync table. It was this vulnerability in this CVE. So again, screen captures where you can see basically where occur. Here we have the call to the function which calls the buffer overflow. Here we have the preparation to point to the offset field of the sync table, and basically in DDAB you have the victory from hackers. Here just a small zoom to show in debugging mode what's happened when you try to crush a really long buffer into a 28 long buffer. So let's summarize what we know until now. We had some acroform JavaScript which detected, we did not see in the assembly, but the code was very professional. We had a JavaScript which detected which version of Adobe Reader was used, and we jumped to specific code. After that, we had an if spray with a put rope data into memory. So it was a return-oriented programming exploit. So basically, we also had technically huge red sled, which acted as a knob sled for transiting between the stack buffer overflow and the rope payload. Don't go into to technical detail right now. What is very interesting, we will discuss it in a few slides, is that with the ICU CNV DLL was used because it's not an ASLR-enabled DLL and offer a lot of nasty things for hackers. So basically, attackers use rob techniques and redirect flow to some code section into a DLL instead of the heap, and permitted them to have the executive rights. So basically, they change some calls on this DLL to craft their payloads. And they also used a really nice trick, which was never seen before, 1 month before on the wild, for example. They used, for example, the creation of an empty file somewhere, which just permitted it to be mapped in memory and benefit from an executable space. For example, it would have enabled them to put a shortcode and execute it even on a DEP-enabled system. So let's talk about the ICU CNV 34 because it's nice. Now it's something which is quite famous in the exploit development underground community, but at this time it was fun and nice. So basically, it's a DLL which is not compiled with an SLR, and therefore is always loaded at the same place on your system. So basically, if a program managed to load it, he is able, by the import address table of this ICU CNV 34 DLL, to predict all ASLR IP address of the system. So, knockout. The program was able to bypass DEP, was able to bypass address space layout randomization, and as it didn't use any XP hard-coded syscall, it also worked on Windows Vista and on Windows 7. So really nice exploit. So yes, finally for the client it was game over. So everything was done. All his client could have executed any kind of nasty things. And yeah, just a few things, but there is some tricky things from hacker which prevented us the hackers didn't want us to analyze everything. So they put a lot of things to prevent, to make our life much harder. And I must say that they succeeded in some ways. So, for example, we were never able to exploit the memory breakpoint. Each time we use memory breakpoint, which would have been really useful because it was unpacking himself on some part of memory, so it was really nice for us to use it. But each time we use memory breakpoint, bang, we arrived in a long loop. We don't know why, we don't know how, but at the time of the loop, it depends, the time depended, but at the time, it throws an exception, and we were game over. So we also noticed that that the MIA DLL file at some points overwrote its own text section. Why? Because you must have wanted at some point to say, these hackers are really disturbing me. I don't want to analyze every encryption systems. Let's do it. I will run everything, and I will attach with, for example, load PE, and I will dump what's running in memory, which is already unencrypted by the process mapping, and I will get everything for free. So basically, if you wanted to do this, you could not, because if you don't know at which time to attach and to dump, you will have just dumped just crappy things. Another trick was that this program passes some all process names. And for example, if you just run procmon with his own real name, you arrive to different things and nearly nothing. You had to rename the procmon to be able to make a quick behavioral analysis. So there's also things we discovered yesterday when we will see the video. Because a friend of mine, Brian Colax, at the end of the room, gently proposed me to make a small video of these things to show you something at the end when I was finishing my slides. Yeah, bad students, I do it yesterday night. And so basically, we discovered other things that we have not into, but there are some anti-debugging techniques which were, basically the malware was triggering different code if you run it inside of VMware, for example. You will show it in the demonstration. So Filemon showed us that unfortunately we were thinking, yes, we are at the end of the fight. We know everything. Everything will be done quickly. No, 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 it's not finished. We detected other binaries, Adobe 1 binary, which was not created if you run VMware, for example. But you can see everything quickly. This Adobe 1 binary was written by the MIA.dll file. This one was not encrypted also. It was a dropper. You could have dumped some ASCII clear text from it, for sure. It could have been a trick because at this point we didn't trust anything. But it was not a trick. You can see the create file, what try with permit to write a stream. You can see some IP which will connect to a remote system to download some things, basically a downloader. This was also confirmed with the behavior analysis, where you can see we've put ROC DNS services to redirect traffic to one of our servers, and therefore we can reach one of your computer. And we could have noticed quite quickly that the program tried to download update.do.x on a website which was bringing home Jude. It makes us smile. And at this time, here we are. The final payload of all these nasty things was to download another executable, the update2 binary, which was in fact a Trojan, banking Trojan based on the SpyEyes, derived from SpyEyes, with new things, but it was based on this one. So let's summarize everything because we have gone quite deeper now. By just opening just a simple PDF file in a social engineering email, clients have generated without noticing it's a MIA.dll file, which was injected into process memory of several systems, and which in turn executed a dropper, downloaded and executed a dropper downloader, Adobe 1, which downloaded from bringing home Jude another final payload, which was update2, which in turn was copied in 2 different locations with a 6-digit randomized name and which run into memory. This was the final aim of attackers. So what's happened on those 2 new files? Adobe 1 files was just simple loader, not encrypted. The second one, the last file, was a C# based binary, a huge, really heavy C# based. And despite it was a C#, it was not possible to obtain the original code with some automated tools, something like that. It was even much more protected than the previous part, which was also quite protected. So it relied on base64 for raw data, MD5, triple DES, AES, a lot of encryption algorithms which are not breakable so easily. And those files, unfortunately, were undetected by most antiviruses. Only a few European solutions were detecting some things in those 2 new files. All antiviruses from the East countries were quite inefficient, which lead us to think, but it's only a theory, it led us to think that it was initially an attack which was aimed to target the Russian segments, because hackers specialize their codes to evade some specific protection depending on who they want to attack. So basically, different dates and different results. The 8th October, only 37% of detection rate for those binaries. And 1 week later, 44%, after we have pushed a lot of signatures and called a lot of vendors. But this year, in June, you had still 1 antivirus on 5 which didn't detect anything. Winners were not maybe the expected ones because we have Microsoft, Sophos, McAfee, Kaspersky, and other antiviruses which are famous, JData, Sophos, Panda, were the next winners. They arrived 1 or 2 weeks later, and other antiviruses still remain not so efficient. So the final payload, I've told you, was a SpyEyes derived code, behave like Zigboat. It basically tried to steal sensitive financial institution credit card data and for sure provide all other features of Trojan attack. So we don't go into technical details, but basically it creates other files. It injects his own job files into other memory space to benefit from privileged programs. It's play with registry to make him survive reboots. It verified that it was called from specific paths or that other binary exist or registry key binaries, common practices to disturb reverse engineering. It queries the LSA to get the computer name, and at the very beginning, lists the whole drive, the whole folder files, and create and give this result remotely. So also some well-known behavior for such Trojan. And finally, it tried to reach 2 web servers hosted in Korea. We also find some Unicode encoding in the last binaries, which seem to demonstrate that it was really done in Korea. Those web servers, okay, we will see it later. Right now, we have just IP positioning ourselves and simulating HTTP server to see what could have happened without making our Trojan communicate with the real bot header, because we wanted to remain low profile and didn't want him to detect us. So we can have detected the hello, I'm here from the Trojan, which were trying to communicate with the bot header. Basically, the first URL was nothing. It was just for redundancy. It was just forwarding all packets to the second one, just in case authorities would have managed to take down the web server. It would have been quite easily to just continue to keep nasty things. Those domains did exist since really long time, since '94 for the first one. It was really old domains, and they hosted lot of websites. One of them was hosting more than 1,060 hundreds of websites. So a huge of possibilities for compromising. Despite its parameters, which effectively sounds like a little bit weird, where you can see your username in the URL, which usually is not really good for you. The website itself also was quite down. It's nice job, because if you look like this, it doesn't look like a compromise. It doesn't look like a remote CNC server, but it was a covered channel. If you investigate into packets, you can see that there is some hidden way to communicate, and that there is something which were not displayed to you. So that's it. We're having the conclusion. Finally, the target was not the client, the Fedor trading client itself. It was his own customers. For sure, it also impacted the Fedor trading system. But once his own website was compromised, everything occurred really quickly. That means that everything was achieved and ready to use, and the real trigger was to add a way to compromise and to get email address. As soon as they collected email address, everything occurred the same day. That means that it was a well-organized system. And basically, it was a real nice, sophisticated attacks, which was afforded by an unfair competitor, another trading companies, international companies, who we decided to attack a competitor, and who rent services in the underground market. Because that's typically the point here. I just want to underline what Miko said yesterday. One of the new rules of the games is that we have some specialized attacks and that hacking have become professional, and that's the case here. If you look globally, we have malware code writing modules with different coders, because different languages programming, different skills, but we have different coder for the dropping, for the downloader, for the banking Trojan. We have some zero-day uncovering. We have social engineering module, which is also a specialty. We have web attacks, which was really also nice attacks. And we must also have some money transfer option and this kind of nasty things in the underground market. In fact, it's really a modern scenario attack where every hacking group are specialized into several services and rent services to other groups and rely on services from others. You cannot enter these groups without being known by 2 or 3 other groups. Basically, it's a real enterprise scenario. They works as all your companies. For sure, they have many business opportunities. It comes from many other countries. Most active are for sure China, Russia, and Brazil, but it's not limited to those countries. So the last slide is that, to conclude, there is much less hacking for fun and much more hacking for profit. Cybercrime has evolved, and now it has become a whole enterprise with a huge economy. And if you want to come a bad guy tomorrow, you don't have even to make your own code. You can run botnet for 1 hour, for 2 hours, for 1 week. You can purchase a licensed malware which comes with its own technical support. So basically, it's really amazing. Cybercrime has now developed and is spreading faster than ever. So welcome in the World Wide Web, and happy forensic for the following new years. And thanks for all. I don't know if we have time. Yes, just 5 minutes. Perfect. It's the time for the demonstration. So here is the demo from Collax. Okay, so just run your debugger. From the debugger, run acro rd32, because we don't want to read 100,000 lines of assembly. So we first run the PDF rendering program. Then we simulate the opening of the file just to go deeper in the assembly. And then we remove one breakpoint. We only let one breakpoint on the string cat operation in the cool type, remember? So now we will be able to run the program and to open the file for real. Let's play. We open definitely the infected PDF. We have the rebuilding process from an old version of Adobe, and here we broke before displaying anything in the PDF, and we can trace it, nearly everything, because as you remember, there is also some kind of anti-debugging techniques, and at one point you will see that we have immunity which is running, and and it will not finish something, but we will proceed with another way. So we have the string cat. You can see on the stack that something nasty will happen. We will overwrite something. Now we'll just make a breakpoint on the final on the line in the cool type, which we call is a pointer to our EAX address. Basically, it's the beginning of the exploit. The ICU CN 30 something DLL that we have discussed for the ASL bypass. And just before returning, we can see on the stack that there is some lot of nasty things. 41. It's only translated by an ink, a SAX or something that doesn't do something really harmful from a pure payload perspective. And here we have a lot of red will occur. So just go back at the end of the stack, because we don't have time to follow each red, which is quite useless for us. Just identify some an address where we could modify our stack pointer to just go a little bit later in the time when we modify our stack pointer with this address, because basically it's a rope attack. You pop on the return address which is on the stack, and each time you return you execute some part of useful code. So here you have the rope attack itself with the create file which occurred. So you can see at the bottom it's a third breakpoint, which is we put some breakpoint on create file W, just some breakpoints, create file mapping to make some break and enable you to see some things that we will not have time to see in other reasons. Create mapping here. And the last one on your file. So let's run. Yeah, we broke on create file hub, fail A. Create file W, create mapping file I, mapping file A. So here, basically, if we broke, you can see all that we discussed with the ICU, with the mapping of the ISO file. Here you have the extraction of the MIA DLL file in a TOM folder, which was the DLL we were talking about for long slides. Here we are. No, we will just put a small breakpoint more on load library to see when this nasty DLL will be loaded into the Acrobat reader process space. Here we are. And here we broke until return. And we have this MIA DLL file. So let's see the process. To show you everything, we have now the MIA DLL file, which is here at the bottom of the screen. Right now, you don't have yet any Adobe 1.x, and you will don't have one, because if you continue the execution, this clever guy will see that we are running some anti-debugger. We have tried to put several hide debug plugin and this kind of things to hide us, but no, we didn't have time for today to detect where exactly it was running. But if you see, we at the bottom, at the end, we arrive in the ACH, in the safe exception handler, and basically, the program will do other things and it will not finish. So okay, just close at this time the debugger and finish to load the real PDF ourselves in the PDF viewer, and it will detect there is no debugger attached to him, and it will finish the work for us. Okay. First, we just run a small script, which will, as you can see, it's 2 different steps. Just 1 minute, it's finished. We just removed every temporary files with a tiny batch to continue the demonstration. It's only a few seconds left. So here we are ready for continuing. Everything is clear from the computer point of view. There is still no Adobe 1 binary. Just remove last file that we forgot and kill an Adobe which was remaining in program, in memory. And now open this nasty PDF directly. We have just redirected the traffic into our own web server because we didn't want to download any Trojan. But the Trojan is not available yet on this URL. But so let's do that. Just double click on it, and while it's opening, we have dead user. It's a fake Trojan that which was installed. The user was spawned at this time. So that's it. Thanks for assisting this conf. Thanks, my friend, for the video. And I think everything is no time up. We don't have remaining time for question, but for sure you can reach us by mail. We can discuss maybe a beer. It's too early, but maybe with a chocolate in the next room, no problem. So thank you.